Today we are talking about social emotional behavioral learning and college and career and community readiness. As we'll see this morning, they are extremely intertwined. And so we're just going to point out some of that and some resources around that as well. As a reminder who we are, I'm Emily Arkfeld, social emotional behavioral learning specialist, currently serving Region 5. ESUs 13, 15, and 16. And I will let Jill introduce herself, but we are growing our team. We have hired for Region 4, which will start this summer, and are in the interview process currently for Region 5, so that we have people really strategically placed throughout the state to better serve our region. So Jill, if you want to go ahead.
Yes, thanks, Emily. Jill Gunther, another one of the SEBL specialists, currently serving Regions 3 and 4. And like Emily said, soon to be just Region 3. And our new SEBL specialist will serve Region 4. And then we are missing Mackenzie. She normally is joining us. She is not available this morning. And so she typically serves Regions 1 and 2. And so good morning, everybody, and glad that you guys joined us.
Thanks, Jill. So we're going to start with our welcoming and inclusion activity this morning, as always. And just to get us in the spirit of what we're talking about today, when we're going to do a Menti. So we want you, I know some of you might be driving, and starting your morning and not accessible to this, and that is fine, but want you to take a minute and think about what makes a good employee, and then you can go to menti.com on your computer or your phone, and put in the code 5800919. And in a second, Jill will switch over to that for us. And so just put in where it's going to be a word cloud. So you can put in one, or I think you can put in multiple things that come to mind when you think of what makes a good employee. If it's not easy for you to get to Menti, but you do want to participate, you can drop it in the chat if that's easier, or you can say it out loud and we can add it to our Menti for you. That growth mindset, their disposition, complementary strengths. We'll give it just another minute or so, see if people can working on getting there, coming up with what they think. Passionate, committed, reliable, flexibility. Thank you. Being there and being on time. Yes, that reliability piece is going to be there when they say they're going to be there. Hardworking, dedicated. Problem solver, relationship builder, willing to take on unwanted jobs occasionally. Yes, sometimes we have to help support our colleagues and our coworkers in the work. Thank you. Also, Jill put the PDF to the slides in there as well. If you guys want to grab those as we go through. Thank you guys for participating in that. So we're going to talk through some of those things, and some of those will pop up as we go through this morning as well. As a reminder, our Padlet houses all of our resources, all of our recordings, all of our previous Padlets. So please feel free to go there, share that. This is not just for people who attend our Coffee Connects. This is to be shared. We want to help support our educators in any way we can. We do know it's getting big. So if you're like, hey, I think I remember this resource and I can't find it, please reach out to any of us and we will help you track that down or send that to you directly. So talking about defining again social emotional behavioral learning, and I know all of you have been with us multiple times, so we always like that reminder. That is a systematic process of fostering social emotional skills among students and our adults in order to create safe and supportive environments with positive behavioral and mental health outcomes for all. And it's been a while, I think, since I've talked about this flower off to the side, because we do see so many of you so often. But really thinking about, we have the roots on that flower specifically because we believe that social emotional behavioral learning is the foundation, are those roots for the behaviors, the people that we grow into, our personalities, all of that grows out of those social emotional behavioral learning skills. And those can be watered and those can be fertilized, and we can really intentionally grow those and make that environment better for that flower to grow. And so we like that as just that reminder of these are those base skills in order for all of us to act in a way that aligns with our values and who we want to be and have those positive behavioral and mental health outcomes. I know, Jill, you're working on like 1,000 links, so I appreciate you also advancing this for me. So here we have our competencies from CASEL: self-awareness, self-management, responsible decision-making, relationships, and social awareness. And usually we have these with our behavioral expectations, and sometimes we have the career readiness standards as well, but we really wanted to point out specifically for our topic today the alignment to those Nebraska standards for career readiness, and we'll go into those a little bit more in depth. But if you can see it on your screen, it's things like communicating, contributing to employee and community success, making sense of problems, critical thinking, working productively in teams, being innovative and creative. And so that's just a snapshot of those, but really ties so nicely to those competencies that we work so hard to foster and model and grow within our students and our adults. And here is our web broken down again. So again, thinking of those standards that we saw on that previous screen, being able to evaluate consequences and problem solve and make responsible choices under responsible decision making, planning and organizing, building motivation and setting goals directly in that self-management, regulating our emotions. There is going to be conflict, and we need to be able to regulate ourselves to help solve that conflict, knowing who we are, what of our interests and strengths. In school, we are wanting kids to identify, what do you want to be? Who do you want to be? What do you want to do? And choose careers and college to help get them there. And so really they have to do some of that inner work of who am I and what do I want and what am I good at and where are some of my gaps and areas for growth. And so spending some time on that and recognizing that social awareness. So having empathy for others, understanding other perspectives that's a huge part of being successful in careers, especially if just that your way is not always right. And we need to recognize that other people have their own perspectives and way of doing things. And how can we then in relationships have teamwork and have that conflict resolution and be able to communicate effectively to have that success in our college career and our community. So this comes directly from CASEL. It's one of their slide decks on the importance of social emotional learning. And so this ties in directly again with what we're talking about today, that research confirms that social emotional learning builds skills that are key to future readiness. We know that it has been shown for students to to reach high school graduation, to have post-secondary enrollment and post-secondary graduation. It's one thing to get to college and to start that freshman year, but to be able to get all the way through to graduation, especially then on to graduate after that, is a big feat. And so we know when we are focusing on social emotional learning in our K through 12, they're more likely to get to that graduation of post-secondary and then obtain that stable full-time employment. And so this is research also, just so the importance of social emotional behavioral learning in secondary settings. So you can see the blue line on the top is current high school students that were surveyed. The purple line is post-high school young adults, so probably in that college, early adulthood. And then parents is in green. And so really the research shows that social emotional behavioral learning in that secondary helps prepare students for college, jobs and careers, prepare students to give back to that community. That social awareness and all of that helps them to recognize the importance of giving back to their community. It has a benefit on their relationships with friends and teachers. I think it's interesting that the current high school students recognize that it improves their relationship with teachers more than it improves their relationships with friends. And so it goes back to that piece of when our educators are building this into their classrooms and into the buildings, that it has that positive impact on those relationships. It can help reduce bullying and it helps them learn academic material. Thank you. Sending kids off to school this morning. So trying to make it quieter. Okay. I think we move on, Jill. Thank you. So again, some of this research, so this is specifically for the teachers, show that 87% believe that social emotional behavioral learning, if we really focus on that, it helps prepare our students for the workforce. 87% also believe that students become, if we have a focus on social emotional behavioral learning, it helps them become good citizens as adults. Again, it goes back to those skills. We want people to be happy, healthy humans, contributing members of their community. 80% believe it helps them move through school and stay on track to graduate. 78% prepare students to get to and through college. Again, getting there is one thing, but finishing a college degree is another thing. And then it helps improve that student achievement in academic coursework. We have just a brief video for you. So this is from Castle as well. They put these webisodes together. I think there's 5 of them about their workforce, SEL and workforce development. And so this is the educating future ready students and just a little blurb about the importance and the benefits of it. So we'll hear it from them.
The second reason it was important to do this now is there's this growing understanding in the field of education that we must adapt to really meet the broader needs of students. Over the past 2 decades, evidence has made it clear that education is about much more than traditional academic subjects like learning math, science, English. Those things are still really important, but we know now that social emotional skills are imperative for youth success and they are teachable in school. With this comes the need to broaden our collective definition of student success and future readiness, like you said. When asked what they want for their children in nationally representative surveys, parents prioritize developing good character and integrity and finding happiness over attending college or finding a career. In addition, schools need to provide youth with more opportunities to apply their classroom learning through real-world experiences. At the same time, there's this recognition that high school has over-prioritized 4-year degrees and that youth must be presented with a wider range of future pathways that include 2-year degrees, they include high-quality credentials that set them up for a growing number of middle skill jobs. As part of this, throughout their K-12 education, they need exposure to diverse career options that help develop their occupational identity to find the calling that not only provides a life-sustaining wage, but instills them with passion and purpose. Going back to that broader vision of success, I think an underreported aspect of the Great Resignation and future of work is that young people are, more than previous generations, yearn for jobs that provide them fulfillment just beyond just salary, and they'll leave their jobs to do that. We started with a review of employer surveys and job listings to find the skills employers are looking for. In 2020, we released that research brief on our findings that in many ways confirmed what we already knew. SEL skills are evergreen. While technical skills shift across jobs and industries, youth will always need to have the self-awareness to be flexible, to come to work with a positive attitude, self-management skills to set and meet deadlines and goals, the social awareness and relationship skills to build relationships with mentors, both supervisors and peers from diverse backgrounds, to understand the needs of others and to communicate effectively, and the responsible decision-making skills to analyze and solve complex problems. The second reason it was important to do this now is
Perfect, thank you. I like the point about that he makes about our students now look for careers that they're passionate about, and if they are not, or they find that it doesn't fit their needs, that they're more likely to leave. That is not trying to see majority of who's on here. So like my parents' generation, my grandparents' generation, that is not the way it was, right? You got in a career and you stuck it out until you retired, and now we're seeing the workforce is getting there and they're like, this doesn't fit my needs and I'm going to move on to the next thing that does. And so really, I think that goes back to having students one, identify their interests, their strengths, and their passions, and hope to find that career for them early on. And so then you don't have as much jumping because you find where you want to be. So this is an example of a portrait of a graduate. So other states have taken to doing this. And so we just threw this one together as an example. So really our graduates need that academic knowledge and they need that technical knowledge, but also along with that, they need the skills listed down below. They need to be able to feel and to show empathy, to establish and maintain relationships, understand and manage emotions, set and achieve goals, make responsible decisions, and acquire and effectively apply knowledge. So as in there, just an example of that portrait of a graduate. So the gentleman in the video alluded to this, and we have a couple slides that make this connection as well. So this also comes from Castle, looking at those competencies that we talk about from Castle: self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making. And then pulling those specific employee in-demand skills from employees. So the boxes on the right directly come from the surveys done for employees of the skills that they want their employers, from the employers skills that they want their employees to have. And then Castle went ahead and connected those to those competencies. So you might have seen this in some of our work before, but on that self-awareness, being able to be flexible. I think that was at the very beginning when we talked about the skills we want our employees to have. To be confident, able to be innovative and creative, show that commitment again. So if you work at this time, you show up at this time and you stay until your work is done. Under self-management, that initiative. So being able to say, I'm going to take this on, or I see a need here. And so I think it was like that, being able to do jobs that maybe people don't want to do, but when you see there is a need and see something that needs to be done, you take the initiative to do that. Having that strong work ethic, time management, that is definitely a skill that we work on while we're in school. Adaptability, organization skills, reliability, and punctuality, again, goes back to being at work when you need to be at work. That ability to work independently and detail oriented. Again, these are skills that we can foster and model within our schools. Social awareness, having that cross-cultural sensitivity and the ability to work with people of different backgrounds and cultures. It happens in our classrooms all the time, and it happens in our careers and our community also. Being able to supervise others, that is, being a leader and being a supervisor is definitely a skill not everyone has. And so how do we help them develop those skills? Having that written and oral communication and listening and conflict resolution, being able to work on teams, not only independently, but also on teams. That ability to collaborate, being able to have those management skills and respond to customer needs. If you ever worked in the service industry, well, all of you are educators, so that I feel like those are very similar things. But in this, you run into people who are not happy with you all the time, and so being able to respond to those appropriately, empathetically, and reach a understanding with the customer or with whether that's a parent or a student. In the education realm as well. And that having integrity and honesty, analyzing and solving complex problems, critical thinking and reasoning, that civic participation and engagement, being able to observe and make ethical and sound decision making. So again, we are really hitting on all of these skills within school to help make our students college, career, and community ready. So I like how it just breaks these down to show that direct correlation. And then this is another just image of this. So this comes from the Committee of Children, but again, showing those workplace readiness skills and how social emotional skills are workplace readiness skills. So having empathy for others, being able to manage our emotions. Again, if you have an angry customer, if you have an angry student, an angry parent, we have to be able to manage our own emotions so that we can handle those situations appropriately. And recognizing what those emotions might be, being able to solve those problems, being assertive. Assertive is not always aggressive. Assertive is knowing how to communicate needs and boundaries in an appropriate manner. Having impulse control, something we all usually need a little practice on, goes back to that self-management, being able to calm ourselves down, and again, to communicate effectively. So this quote comes from Tim O'Brien Holmes, who's a human resource manager. Not quite sure where he is. But we like this quote that when our education system puts an emphasis on social emotional learning, we know our future is full of opportunity for our businesses and the impact we can have on our communities. And I like when you look at the actual wheel from Castle, it has the different environments on it. So it's school, home, and community. And for a variety of reasons. And I think when we really are focusing on social emotional behavioral learning within our schools, then not only do our students go out and into college, into those careers in the community, into the community. And so they take those skills out with them, but those students are going home and they are talking to their parents and their caregivers about what they're learning. And if the school has good communication to parents are saying, oh, they worked on this school, or this skill, or oh, this is going on as well. And so they are also learning and practicing some of those skills, which they then take into their careers and the community as well. And so it really just builds that from the ground up when we have a focus on that. So this again, so NDE has a lot of fantastic resources around this. If you have time to peruse their website, we've linked in this checklist, and then there's a large booklet as well. And if we have time, we might pop that open just to show you guys what that looks like. But we like this checklist again to show that connection. So all of the standards on here are the ones that have the image next to it, and then some of the sub skills for that. So even like the applying appropriate and academic and technical skills, so that strategic thinking is under there. And that really ties back to the competencies that we talk about, that communicating effectively and breaking that down into speaking and writing and your professional etiquette, because that's a big piece of things, and customer service, having personal responsibility and being able to meet expectations, in that contributing to employer and community success. So like problem solving, we talked about that one, having that work ethic, critical thinking, decision making, being adaptable. These are all things that we, show on our own wheel as we break that down into the different skills related to each competency. Creativity and innovation, we've talked about that. Leadership and ethics and management, that teamwork, conflict resolution, social and cultural competence. So we show lots of national resources, and those are all great. And we really like this because this is specific to Nebraska. This is what NDE is saying. These are our Nebraska standards for career readiness. And when you look at the breakdown of those skills, and sometimes not even the breakdown, they really directly relate back to what we talk about in social emotional behavioral learning. And it really, I think it drives home that point that these are just skills that we want our students and our adults to have. And so again, just helping others maybe make that connection when they don't quite see it, but this is how we get our kids to be successful post-graduation, is when we foster these skills in our schools and explicitly teach them. And again, when we do that in a systematic way, we have the best possible chance for positive outcomes for our students, for our schools, for our districts overall. So doing things, using data to make decisions and problem solving, having that sound infrastructure and shared leadership, having the right people at the table, the right professional development, that communication or collaboration and communication. So not just within our buildings among our staff, but into the community as well, with our parents, letting our students have a voice in what they're learning and what they're doing. And it was alluded to or mentioned in that video about offering a variety of ways for students to apply their learning into different workforce areas. And so letting students have a voice of this is what I think would be helpful for me, or can I try something in this area? And then layering that continuum of support. So what we do for all students is fantastic, but what do we need to do for some of our students and a few of our students as well? This comes from the National Career Development Association, but really we like this because these are the 4 strategies that they identified to help enhance that career readiness of young adolescents. This specific to social emotional learning skills, but this is what we talk about at tier 1 and tier 2. So having that positive school climate and relationships, supporting positive behavior, offering elective courses and extracurricular activities, and then that social emotional learning specific classroom practices and curricula, and then layering that up as needed. But this is what, I mean, you guys have been with us for a while. This is what we are touting all of the time. This is what we're talking about, really building those strong tier 1 practices. And when we do that, and when we have these strategies in place, again, laying that foundation for our students to be college, career, and community ready.
Perfect. Thanks, Emily. And with that, we have just a few visuals just to kind of show those tiered supports as well. This actually comes from an article. We have it linked on the slide for you guys as well, so you can certainly take a look. But we just really liked how it was just kind of laid out there when we're thinking about what are some of those tier 1 supports as we're really trying to work to get our students ready for college, for career, for community. And as you can see here, really thinking about some of those things along the lines of that academic engagement at tier 1, really thinking about building those positive mindsets, those growth mindset skills, thinking about some of that critical thinking. So things like budgeting in math, the flipped classroom. So really enhancing that technology and giving students that experience, and really building those responsibility skills as well. Being able to utilize some of that peer critiquing, being able to utilize kind of that mentorship as well, building those student portfolios. And then at the end there, that transition competencies, really thinking about some of those career assessments. So Emily spoke to earlier, really thinking about what are your interests? What are your areas of strength? What do you really want to grow and build upon? So a lot of those career assessments can really give us great information around that. But this just kind of shows some of those things at that tier 1 level and kind of breaks it down into each of those different categories as we're thinking about that. With that, same type of thing, but then kind of looking at what are we doing for some of those students, in addition to those things that you saw on the last slide for that tier 1. So when we're thinking about academic engagement, maybe it's a check-in, check-out system for some of our students. Maybe it's really utilizing more of that progress monitoring, academic progress monitoring. Maybe it's some after-school supports. Assistive technology is another one listed on there. Maybe it's some different small groups for some social skills tutoring, some social skills modeling. Maybe it is really thinking about those connections with families and caregivers, as well as really that engagement with the community supports that are available. And so things like service learning as well, maybe some career academies, maybe things like job clubs or opportunities to volunteer or really get some of that internship or externship or apprenticeship opportunities for students as well. So again, just very nicely laid out as we're thinking about some of those tier 2 supports. And then with that, moving into thinking about those tier 3 supports, what are we doing for a few students as well? So again, really laid out by that academic engagement piece, that mindset piece. So the learning processes. So maybe it is taking a look at additional visual supports for students, thinking about helping them really build their organizational skills, building their how do I schedule different things. That assistive technology piece is in there, collaboration again with some of those outside agencies, really making those connections for potential additional supports for students at needing some of those tier 3 supports as well. As you can see in that transition competencies, that last column there, person-centered planning, wraparound services, maybe some of that work-based learning opportunities, could potentially be both paid or unpaid. Maybe for our secondary students, it's really working towards earning some of those elective credits through that work-based learning as well. Again, really working on that parent engagement to really build that post-school planning, whatever that might be, whether it's getting students ready to go on to a career, to go on to, maybe college, things like that. So really getting them to build those skills that Emily had mentioned earlier. But again, this is just kind of a nice visual to show some of those ideas, not an end all be all, but kind of gets us thinking about some of those different supports. This also comes from Castle. So again, we have linked in the brief that this comes from. Emily had mentioned, so this visual from Castle where it has the competencies there in the middle, and it really shows how we are working to really target those competencies, those skills that fall within those competencies across a variety of environments. So within that school setting, so schools and classroom setting, at home, so with those families, with those caregivers, and then also within the community, really working to build and target those skills that fall within each of those competencies. And for the students all throughout their educational career, so all the way from preschool, through college or career as well. And so this is just kind of a nice way to kind of break it down when we're thinking about really those early learners. So kind of that preschool age, really thinking about how can we expose them and bring that awareness to some of the different job career opportunities, and how really targeting some of those social, emotional, behavioral learning skills are going to help build that capacity to be successful post-secondary. And then kind of getting into that middle level, so kind of that middle school level of thinking about exploration and engagement in some of those different careers in college and community readiness, and then continuing to build on that. So just kind of going up the ladder, we move into that immersion, participation, and preparation. So that's going to be more of our upper middle school, high school students as we're thinking about that. And this next slide really does a nice job of breaking that down. So when we're thinking about that preschool and elementary level, and then moving into the middle school, and then moving into the high school, what does some of that exposure and awareness mean? Well, that could be things like career days. So bringing in some of those community helpers, right? That exposure to, firefighters, police officers, all of the different jobs and community helpers within that, we can really bring that awareness to the students at that level. Maybe having some guest speakers come in, maybe that's engaging with community partners, maybe that's engaging with our parents and our caregivers to come in and talk about whatever their career is, and just kind of the impact on that. Doing some different field trips within the community and really just exposing through literature as well is a great way to really be talking about some of the different career opportunities, really talking about some of the skills that are needed for those careers in that preschool and early elementary level. As we move into that middle school level, really thinking about some of those project-based learning types of things, maybe doing some different volunteering, some community service within the community to really bring that awareness that way and really begin to engage those learners within the community. Even at that middle school level, being able to do some different job shadowing so they can see, firsthand what some of those jobs are within the community. Maybe even participating in like some mock interviews. Maybe that's, teachers are kind of playing the role of the interviewer. Maybe it's different administrators. Maybe it's bringing in some community partners to really go through that interview process so students can really get that firsthand experience with going through what does it take to be ready and prepared for an interview. What types of things do I need to be ready to answer if I'm interviewing to work with with kids, or if I'm interviewing to work in the healthcare field or whatever it might be. So those are just some great things to think about for our middle school population. And then moving into that high school population, where it's even expanding on those previous pieces, really immersing them, having them participate in the community, being able to really see firsthand some of those different opportunities if they choose to go on to college as well. So some of that work-based learning, really kind of expanding on that, maybe getting students some different opportunities for internships or externships. And I mentioned earlier, maybe that's for some elective credit with some work-based learning, or maybe that's something in the summertime as well. Really thinking about some of those career pathway programs. I know a lot of our schools and districts are able to offer some of those just kind of career programs where they're getting some of that experience, whether it be in the healthcare field or working with students or in the education field. And then just some of those apprenticeships is another just opportunity as well. So this is just kind of a nice visual, could certainly be shared with your colleagues here, just to kind of get us thinking, what are some different ways that we can really build and expand on some of those social emotional behavioral learning skills that are going to get our students ready for whatever they may choose post-secondary, but not waiting for those middle school and high school students, starting it very early on for our preschool and our early elementary as well. This is just a nice representation here of thinking about the progression of SEL standards. And so as you can see here, we have some numbers, and then we have a whole lot of, I'm not a math person, so geometry, trigonometry, I don't know, looks like a big old mess to me. But really thinking about how when we are learning those math skills, right, we're really focusing on just kind of that number awareness first, being able to identify numbers, and then moving into really growing and expanding those skills in order to do that higher level math. And so this just kind of that same idea as we're thinking about that progression of SEL skills. So from kindergarten, really thinking about identifying those feelings and emotions. But as we move on, we're going to continue to build on those skills, right? So maybe around grade 5, it's more using those strategies to be able to manage their emotions and really be more self-reflective, being able to utilize some of those skills to manage when they're feeling frustrated, when they're feeling overwhelmed. And then continuing on, as you can see there with that grade 12, really understanding like how what I am doing and how I'm handling my emotions impacts those around me as well. So just kind of really showing that progression of building upon those SEL skills. If you guys have been with us before, you guys may have seen this. This just really shows that link between academics and social emotional behavioral learning, and really drives home how building those SEBL skills really isn't one more thing. It's what we're already doing within the classroom, but it's really about being intentional and really building on and modeling those skills. So this is just a nice representation like that we like to show. In Nebraska, we don't have those SEL standards, but if you take a look, they really are built within those academic standards. And so these are some examples of a grade 10 ELA standard, a grade 7 social studies standard, and then we have a kindergarten PE standard. But if you take a look, it's really talking about building that understanding of self and others. And that first one, really building that perspective taking. So thinking about empathy and understanding how what we do is affecting those around us. That last PE one is talking about personal responsibility. It's talking about working with others. So teamwork or collaboration. And then demonstrating proper etiquette and safety. And so as you can see, it really is targeting that self-awareness and social awareness. And then that last one, that responsible decision-making, building those relationship skills and that self-management. So this is just a great piece to be able, again, to share with colleagues to really show that connection, like, hey, you guys are already doing these things. It's really just about being explicit and being intentional. And to kind of show how that can be done, we've linked a ton of different just example lesson plans for a variety of different core areas as well. So there's an ELA, there's a math, there's a social studies at the levels as well. So definitely things to come back to and reference for you guys as well. This next one, again, we have linked these in, but it just shows it actually comes from Wisconsin, but it's just a nice kind of crosswalk to be able to show some of the different skills that fall within the competencies, kind of how it's broken down. So the domain, and then what that looks like for our secondary kind of standards. Again, this comes from Wisconsin, but it just kind of gets us thinking about what are some of those employability skills, some of those visuals that Emily had referenced earlier. How do they play into the standards and then the competency? So I would encourage you to take a look at this as well. It is just kind of a nice reference point to really get us thinking about how those things fit in. The second link on there, so that workforce guide, also does a really nice job of kind of showing some of the different practices. So whether it be modeling, mentoring, role playing, and what skills those are targeting and how we can do that in the classroom, how we could do that kind of maybe in a work type setting, or then even just an after school setting as well. We had shared a few slides ago some of the things that have come from NDE. This is another just great thing to go back and access. So they have a variety of different lesson plans and some of those SEL skills and how we can really target college, career, community readiness skills through some different lesson plans. And so this is on the NDE site, specifically the CTE area. And so we have linked that in, but again, a variety of different grade levels, a variety of different just core areas that I would encourage you to take a look at because they have available lesson plans there as well. This is another one, so reinforcing SEL throughout the school day. So I kind of mentioned one of the Wisconsin documents does the same thing, but really kind of breaks down what the skill is. So the social emotional behavioral learning skill, how that can really be targeted within academics. So in the classroom, how that could be targeted with just through random acts of social emotional learning, and then really building on those teachable moments. So this is just, again, a great reference point that could be easily printed. We've linked it in on this slide, but really thinking about sharing some different ways that we can really reinforce those SEBL skills. The second link, the 5 tips for supporting college career readiness with SEL, just kind of goes through 5 different tips. You know, it says there it's not all about academics. Of course, that is an important piece, but really driving home that we really want to target some of those skills to get our students ready for whatever they choose to do post-secondary as well. And I know we are almost out of time here. Just a couple more shares for you guys. This Maryland's transition continuum is another just great reference point as we're thinking about what are some different ways all the way from birth through post-secondary, thinking about ways to really kind of target some of those skills for transition. So we have linked that in, as well as the Nebraska transition planning guidance. Again, kind of breaks down some of those skills through the transition process as well. And then on the other side there, that Castle Educating Future Ready Students is just kind of a nice little continuum there as well, thinking about building upon those skills for that post-secondary. So definitely some things to come back to for you guys. We wanted to give you an opportunity. Like I said, I know we are right at the end of our time here, but really quickly, if you guys have anything that you would like to share in terms of what are your ESUs, your schools, your districts doing to really help build some of those college career community readiness skills for students. If you want to unmute, you can certainly do that. You can drop something in the chat, but we would love to just have you guys share that that's just a great learning tool as well to hear what others are doing. So I'll give you guys a minute. If anybody's feeling brave this morning. Otherwise, you can certainly put something in the chat as well. No takers, too early, huh? Perfect, yes. So yes, staff in your PD department that support districts with that CTE planning, growing that knowledge around how those things are really interconnected, intertwined, that intersection of CTE and SEBL, most definitely. Great example there. If you guys come up with other things, yes, please put them in the chat, and we can certainly come back to those. Another just kind of quote to really drive home that relationship of SEL, SEBL, and college career community readiness. Our job is not to prepare students for something. Our job is to help students prepare themselves for anything. So just kind of a nice quote there as we end our time together today. And then lastly, our wonderful regional leads put together some webinars around evidence-based strategies and the tip. And so we have linked those in as well. All of those are available there or on our Nebraska NeMTSS YouTube channel. And then just as part of our exit ticket, if you guys would fill that out, we'll put that in the chat as well. Again, just helps us continue to improve, brings you guys topics that you want to hear about for our Coffee Connects and just different ways to bring us together. Our next Coffee Connect will focus on social, emotional, behavioral learning at home as we gear up for the summer months. And with that, that brings us to our optimistic closure. So really just going to let you guys personally reflect. You can certainly put it in the chat if you would like, but just personally you've in over the past year and really think about just some of those things that you've grown in personally, either professionally or personally. And so with that, that brings us to the end. I want to just thank you guys for joining us again today. We've put a lot of different links in the chat, but if you need anything, feel free to reach out.